Well, the tragic case of a woman being run over by a bus and losing her life in the centre of Sydney is now being investigated by the police to see what the circumstance is. But there is no doubt that in the centre of Sydney, in fact in most of the densely populated parts of Sydney, the CBDs right across the city, that we have a situation in this city where essentially the way cars and pedestrians interact just isn't working. There are too many people who are wandering onto the streets. There is constant stories of people wearing headphones who are completely distracted, that aren't keeping an eye on the roads. There are talk of people who then wander onto the streets when they are talking on the phone. You've only got to drive around the streets to see people who decide that they're going to try and play chicken with the traffic, because rather than walk 50 metres down to the street corner where there is a pedestrian crossing, they decide to try to walk across. They'll stand on median strips. The most dangerous things possible. You can see it everywhere. Now, whether what happened in Sydney yesterday as a result of that is probably irrelevant in the context of this, where we are using it as an example of what can happen if people are on the roads in this way, because you've got in the centre of Sydney 5 or 6 people being hit by cars or buses every week. Now, you contrast that with the city of New York. Now, in New York, and I was there a year ago, I started to adopt the Sydney approach, which is that if you're midway between 2 pedestrian crossings and the street's reasonably clear and there's a gap in the traffic, you think, oh, I'll get across here. And you suddenly realise that no one else is doing it. Because in New York, they cross according to the directions on the traffic lights. People don't just wander across the roads when there's a gap in the traffic. It just doesn't happen there. And it's probably because they've tried to reinforce the culture of obeying the law when you are a pedestrian, not having people wandering onto the streets. And I'm sure if you look at the statistics, there'll be fewer people being hit by cars there than there are here. So what we need to do is do what the police have been doing. They've been going out there and they've been blitzing the streets. They've been giving people $67 on-the-spot fines for jaywalking. Some of the people who've been hit by these fines have been bleating and carrying on and saying, well, hang on, I was just walking across the street. But the truth is, the consequence of what people have been doing could be being hit by a bus, and we saw the horrific consequences that can follow yesterday. So what the police have been doing is a good thing. It's a cultural change that's needed, and I think every one of us, if we're honest, would know that that cultural change probably applies to us.